What up, Net fans? NetsBoy here, bringing your latest in your Brooklyn Nets news. Today is January 23rd, and the Nets continue looking good. Continuing looking good. That's not a real phrase. Continue to look good. So they are currently 8-1. Their last 9 games. They had a great win over the Hawks in London. Followed that off with an even better win over the Knicks at MSG. That was great. Revenge. And then most recently they just beat the Magic. So, looking really good. They are looking really good. I'm kind of pulling a Jason Kidd and not wearing my sunglasses because the Nets are playing really well. Kind of like the way he's not wearing his tie since they started this winning streak. I'm not that superstitious, but some people are, so I'm doing it on their behalf. If that makes any sense. So no sunglasses for me. I probably won't wear my sunglasses until the Nets lose 2 straight. If the Nets lose 2 straight, then my sunglasses will go back on in the following NetsBoy episode. You have my word. That's how it will work. So, yeah. Nets are currently 18-22, 4 games under 500, but 2.5 games out of the 4th seed, and 3.5 games out of the 3 seed. And they're currently the 7th seed. Who would have thought? But that's how bad the East is. If the Nets were in the West, they wouldn't even be in the playoffs. They would be 5 games out of the playoffs if they were in the West. But whatever, they're not. They're in the East, so they're the 7th seed. Good for them. They've really turned it around. And before I go into why I think they've turned it around, just a little news. Of this earlier this week, the Nets traded Tyshawn Taylor to the Pelicans for a 2nd-round draft pick, and cash was involved. I don't remember which team got the cash, but cash was involved. This seemed like something that was going to happen sooner or later, because I don't know if you noticed, but I noticed when Darren Williams was out with that ankle injury and Sean Livingston was starting, Tyshawn Taylor did not really play. He didn't really see the light of day. And you would think that perhaps he would play, being that he's the only other true point guard on the roster. But he wasn't. Instead, Jason Kidd was playing Sean Livingston like 42 minutes a game and having Jason Terry and Allen Anderson play in and have like Paul Pierce be like a point forward when Livingston was out. So that definitely made me scratch my head and be like, something's up there. And I think that Tyshawn Taylor and Jason Kidd, maybe Jason Kidd just didn't like Tyshawn's game or something. Mike Fratello said something along the lines is he didn't fit in Jason Kidd's system, whatever the hell that means. I didn't even know Jason Kidd truthfully had a system. But that's what was said. So it seemed like because he wasn't playing, that didn't shock me. I said, ooh, something's up there. And they traded him. And you know what? I think that's a good trade for all parties. You know, I think it's good for the Pelicans. They're getting a good young player for their point guard situation. I think Drew Holiday's hurt, so they got somebody they can try to figure out and develop. It's good for Tyshawn Taylor because, let's be honest, he really wasn't going to see many minutes with the Nets. He needs to be on a bad team to develop his game. And it's good for the Nets because they get a draft pick. And as we know, the Nets don't have any. So even though it's a 2nd-round pick, who cares? It's still more than what they had. So it's a good trade all around. But then in a separate deal, the Nets traded Toko Shengelia, or Shengelia, whatever the hell you want to call it, or call him, to the Bulls for Marcus Teague. And I think the rights to some international player. I don't remember his name, though, but the rights to him. This was obviously a move done after you trade Tyshawn Taylor to have that emergency 3rd-string point guard on the team, just in case something happens to Darren Williams. Or, you know, and Marcus Teague is a guy that will probably be in the D-League most of the year, but he has some NBA experience his first year in the league, which I think was last year. I think it's his 2nd year. So if you need him, he could come up and play some minor significant minutes in if needed for the Nets. But mostly he's probably going to be in the D-League developing. So I think it's a good trade. I think, you know, it's not going to be a big deal because both those guys weren't rotational players as it is. So it's not that big, but it kind of cushions the Nets a little bit. So that's what happened. Will they make any other moves? I kind of doubt it. unless they go on a slide again, I don't think they're going to make any moves the rest of this year because they've got chemistry, which is part of the reason why they've turned it around now. They finally got the chemistry. But to me, the biggest thing I've noticed with this team, and I can't believe I'm saying it, but I believe the reason why the Nets have turned it around and are playing better is because there is no Brook Lopez. Now, I am by no means saying the Nets were losing because of Brook Lopez, but they're winning because there is no Brook Lopez. Now, let me explain. I know that's a little confusing. First, as you all know, Brook Lopez is my favorite Net and one of my favorite players. I think he's a top 5 center in the game, and I think he's the best offensive big in the game. Him or LaMarcus Aldridge. So we know that I'm not hating on Lopez, and for me to come out here and say that I think the Nets are better off, at least this year, this Nets team is better off without Lopez, you know I have to actually mean it, because I do. This Nets team, the way it's put together, with Pierce, Garnett, and everybody, is a better team with a free-flowing offense. Because you look at the starting lineup, Darren Williams, Joe Johnson, now Allen Anderson, Paul Pierce, and Garnett, 3 of those guys are playmakers. Darren Williams, Joe Johnson, and Paul Pierce. When you have 3 playmakers on a team, you have to have a free-flow offense because you can't get the ball down and held by one player. When Lopez was out there, being that he was such a great post presence, they got the ball down to Lopez and tried to play off of him, which worked sometimes, but it also was not utilizing the strengths of the rest of the team. Paul Pierce is not a spot-up jump shooter. He really isn't. His skill set is low block, getting the ball in the post as well, and using his strength and size to shoot over players, slashes a little bit. Yes, he can shoot the 3, but he's a playmaker. Joe Johnson's the same way. His strength is not becoming a perimeter player, and that's what you need when you have a guy like Lopez on your team. So what's happening with the Knicks right now? Carmelo Anthony, when you have a focal point of your offense, one player who's the focal point of your offense, you need to play, and you want to play off of him, you need to have players that fit with him. You need perimeter players, guys who catch and shoot, guys who don't need the ball in their hands to be efficient. And let's be honest, Paul Pierce, Darren Williams, and Joe Johnson, those guys need the ball in their hands to be efficient. Joe Johnson has proven that he can be a spot-up 3 shooter, so he kind of works. Darren Williams sort of can too, but Paul Pierce, really, he can't. He needs the ball in his hands. I never realized how much Paul Pierce needs the ball in his hands for him to be efficient at all. And so this current team with Lopez, no free flow. The ball gets passed out of the double team, but there was no extra pass because there was just, too much of a focal point. The team last year had a little bit better of a flow to it because Joe Johnson became more of a spot-up player, and Darren Williams was a shot creator as well. But Lopez and him played off each other, which is what you need to do. You need a playmaker on your team. You always need at least 1 or 2 playmakers. I believe I talked earlier in the season about the athletic guard or the athletic player. A player who can create their own shot. How important it is to have those players. You only need 1 or 2 of them, though, on a team. The Nets had Darren Williams and Joe Johnson last year, but now you grab in Paul Pierce. That's conflict. It's a conflict. And when Garnett wasn't playing well at the beginning of the year, you really had a lot of pressure on Lopez, and without the ball moving, it just didn't work. The ball just stuck. Lopez is out there now, Now, they start Allen Anderson, and they've got more free flow. Paul Pierce slides over to the power forward. One of the few great moves by Jason Kidd, who I have to admit, is doing a lot better now as a coach, figuring it out. I mean, that was a great move starting Pierce. As the power forward, I think that's really helped this team out a lot. It certainly helped Pierce out a lot. But now you're stretching out the floor, and there's creating a free flow of the offense. There's not one player the offense focuses around with now. Not even Darren Williams. Now that he's back, He doesn't even have the ball in his hands all the time. Like, he does sometimes, but they don't play through him. And that's what makes the Nets so dangerous. You don't really know who's going to get the ball because it's a free flow. It's kind of what was so effective with the Nuggets last season. You don't know. Yeah, Ty Lawson was their star player, but the whole team, they had Gallinari, and then they had Andre Miller making shots, and then they had Wilson Chandler hitting. Like, they had all these guys who you didn't know who was going to take the shot because they had a free flow offense. Hands, free flow. That's what the Nets are now. You don't know who's going to... I mean, obviously Joe Johnson's taking the big shots. Darren Williams got the ball in his hand a lot. But Alan Anderson's making big shots now. Teletovic comes off the bench. He hits some big threes. Paul Pierce gets the ball. He penetrates, kicks out to Garnett, who's actually making a shot. It's incredible. And it's because there's not one player who the offense is focused around. So this in particular team, this Nets team, is better without Lopez. It's the truth. It's the truth. Now, what's going to happen next year, I don't know, because Lopez will be back, and you certainly do not trade Lopez. Just because, the team were playing well without him. By all means, he's a top 5 big in the league. You don't trade him. You just put a team around him that will work better. And here's an example of a team that I think would have made the Nets just as good as they are now, if not even better. That is... if Lopez, first of all, could get rebounds, like a 7-footer. But if you started Teletovic, Allen Anderson, Joe Johnson, Darren Williams, and Lopez, that would be a really effective team because it stretches the floor. Now, you might get beat up on the boards because, like I said, Lopez would struggle. So I don't know if that's really the greatest thing in the world. But offensively, that offense would be fantastic. Maybe that's something to look into in the future. Obviously, what does that put Pierce or Garnett or any of those guys at? I don't know. That's all next season. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. But that is the truth of why this team is doing well now. There's no one focal point of the offense. The ball has better flow, and now the offense is better. And the defense is doing a lot better, too. Let's be honest, because now their defensive intensity is there. They trust each other on defense, and they just have chemistry. That's why I don't think the Nets are going to make any moves come the trade deadline unless they start sliding again. And I still do want them to do that Zach Randolph trade, only because of next year. I still don't think this team can win a championship this year. Actually, I'm pretty sure they can't. And I almost want them to do that move to get Zach Randolph so for next season, because I do believe Garnett might retire, and I think Pierce is kind of irrelevant on this team. Yes, he's had some good games, but I think the Nets could really live without him. And I think he would play well with Lopez because he can rebound the ball well, and he doesn't need the ball in his hand to be effective. You can play off Lopez. I still want them to do that. I really do. Even if it means ruining this great chemistry they've got now, I almost want them to do it. I don't know. I'm torn on it. I don't know. I really am still torn on it. I think if they traded Paul Pierce and Jason Terry, I think Jason Terry needs to go too, to be honest, because he's kind of useless. His contract is way too big for a player who plays only about 12 minutes a game and makes maybe one shot a game. They can totally scratch him off. But I don't know. I don't know. I really don't. It's a tough one. Let me put it this way. If they don't trade for Zach Randolph this season, I'm okay with it. If they do trade, I'm okay with it. But personally, I don't think they will, because I think the way the team's playing, you would have to be a little stupid to mess with this chemistry that they got right now. So, they probably won't do anything. I just, remember, that was just something I read 2 weeks ago that there was a discussion about, but that's when they were losing, or 3 weeks ago. So, who knows? But overall, the Nets just got to keep it going. It's the next few games. They're going to the Mavericks. The Mavs are coming to visit this Friday. I will be at that game, as I mentioned last week. See my favorite player, Vince Carter, play. So if you're at that game, see if you see me and maybe recognize me and say, "Hey, NetsBoy." If you don't see me, oh well. But whatever. But if you do, that'd be kind of cool. If you're one of the 10 people who watch my videos and you actually see me, that'd be cool to say, "Hey, what up?" So, but I will be at that game, and yeah, I really what I want in that game. I want Vince Carter to score 30 points, but I want the Nets to win. That's what I want to see. But you know that game can go either way. But then they got the Celtics after that, and then they got the Raptors after that, which you know I think they should have won them against the Raptors the first time. So once again, the next 3 games, I think the Nets can go 2-1 the next 3 games, and if they start doing that, they'll be in that 4 seed sooner, faster than you think. So let's continue keeping our fingers crossed, Nets fans. And if you're at the Mavs game, look for me. I would look for you if I knew who you were. But then, other than that, let's go Nets. Let's keep it up. So this is NetsBoy signing off.